Katerina Jaka watched the German soldiers flee. Streaming from the east, that's what she was seeing. Allied bombers flew above them. She thought they all might die, and then soon there was the silence of all the SS men. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Katerina Jaka saw red flags flapping in the breeze above the Russian tanks, and she fell upon her knees. And so many different voices in so many different tongues sang the most beautiful song that could ever have been sung. In German, Lithuanian, in Polish and in Dutch, a myriad of melodies has never had been such. In Russian and in Yiddish, Italian and French, emerging from the forests beneath the trench. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. When the sun rose the next morning, it was the 1st of May, and they all sang the Internationale. They all sang the Internationale. Völker hört die Signale auf zum letzten Gefecht. Die Internationale erkämpft das Menschenrecht. Völker hört die Signale auf zum letzten Gefecht. Die Internationale erkämpft das Menschenrecht.
Hello, and welcome to Revolutionary Socialist Review with Chris Driscoll and Rainer Shea. Hello, Rainer. How are you?
Hello. What's going on this week? This week, more fires happened in California.
Yeah.
And then the sky's orange again.
And the sky's orange again. That's stupendous. That's terrible. Yeah, I've seen a couple of articles on the Greenville Post, with which you are familiar because you are a contributor to the Greenville Post, as I used to be, but I've been kind of lazy lately on that. But yeah, one of the articles they had, I think it was on Friday, was about scientific evidence that global warming is, in fact, anthropologically introduced global warming is, in fact, the cause of so many more fires in California and in the whole West, Southwest at least. So, yeah, it's a terrible thing. I debated on whether to put that as a topic tonight, and I didn't because we're already so chock full. So maybe we ought to just launch right in, if you don't mind, and start with the first topic, which is President Xi, that's the Chinese president, demands a global green revolution while Trump plays the climate denying cur. I like that word, cur. Anyway, this is an article about the last week's General Assembly, Special General Assembly of the UN, I think because it was the 75th anniversary of the UN or something like that. And so it was virtual, like most meetings these days, online, that kind of thing. But President Xi gave just a stupendous speech and really surprising everyone, calling for a green revolution, committing China to a whole bunch of targets that are quite phenomenal, and will go a long way in helping to at least to mitigate China's contribution to the greenhouse gases that are causing, helping to cause global warming. Trump, on the other hand, well, let me say a few more things about President Xi. He also said, and I totally agree, that the how did he put it? I think that just belligerent, aggressive military threats by the U.S. and its allies were not helpful. Were pushing the world towards more division, and that they really need to stop it because there's a lot more serious things to deal with. Trump, on the other hand, oh my God, this guy's a fucking Looney Tune. Trump gets up and attacks China first thing, as we would expect. Calls for war, basically, a war in all but name, war in all but the nuclear aspect of it, against China. He, of course, climate denying. That was extremely, his comments on the climate were the perfect contrast, of the ultra imperialist pig capitalists versus the good socialist statesman who is concerned with human life. Whereas it's obvious Trump doesn't give a fuck about human life. Trump knows that global warming is real and that it's being caused in large part by human activities. He knows that. He's not that dumb. I mean, he's pretty fucking dumb, but he's not that dumb. But he knows that it's going to eat into his bottom line right now, so he denies it. And that's the same thing for all these idiot capitalists who are climate deniers. Anyway, your thoughts?
I wonder what exactly Trump said. Like, did he revert back to his initial public line on global warming, which was global warming is a hoax invented by the Chinese to sabotage American industries? I mean, it wouldn't be surprising.
Yeah, well, I mean, he did raise COVID-19 and try to blame that on China. And he, just in general, I'm looking for the exact article that this comes from so I can recommend it. Let's see if I can find it. There was also something on Biden that I had for this week concerning climate change. His climate change platform, which includes burning more fossil fuels, and his solution is carbon capture, which, I mean, that'll help, but that's not what's needed at the moment. What's needed at the moment is mitigation right now. Let's see. Reuters. Well, I'm taking up too much time. I'm probably not going to be able to. I've got this down here. I know that, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be able to find it at the moment where I got this this stuff from. So I'd be able to consult and tell you more. But the name that I gave to it is the exact name of the article. I can't remember where it might have come from. Mint Press, or I don't know. President Xi demands global green revolution while Trump plays the climate denying cur. Actually, I think that was from the Greenville Post. Again, the Greenville Post. But I can't find.
Well, of course not, because the Greenville Post. I've tried to look up the Greenville Post content, and the Google algorithm just doesn't show it typically. I don't know. I've typed in the Greenville Post, and the actual site does not show up. So
Really?
I mean maybe it's different now, but it's hard to believe that the Greenville
Were you
Post
spelling it right with an A instead of an E? You know, GREAN.
I'm guessing not. This is freaky. It's like the Berenstein Bears versus Berenstain Bears.
Not familiar with that.
It's an internet thing.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, yeah, it's freaky. That's for damn sure. Yeah, definitely. So, yeah, I have done Greenville Post searches just recently. As long as you spell it right, GREANVILLE Post, the Greenville Post, it'll come popping up. Although I do not use Google anymore. I keep saying Google because you know how that bullshit, capitalist bullshit, like insidiously enters your brain. But I use DuckDuckGo. People should remember DuckDuckGo. That's a better. They don't track you. They don't think on you. They don't sell your every move to the government and to capitalist corporations and so forth. So people should keep that in mind and go for that. Anyway, yeah, I believe this article was on the Greenville Post, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just take one more quick look. I think I might have deleted it for some reason.
Let's move on to the next topic.
Yeah, let's move on to the next topic. Oh no, you know what? It was on Reuters. Son of a bitch. Reuters article. People can look up Reuters.com. That's a big news agency from Britain. U.S. UN Assembly climate change. China calls for global green revolution as Trump goes solo on climate. So, yeah, check it out. It's on Reuters. I'm sorry. Yeah, but it was a pretty good article. I mean, occasionally Reuters can do some good stuff. Not very often, but okay. Moving right along because we're wasting time here. I'm chatting too much. Except, say that right, that capitalism can't save us from climate crisis and work to tear down the system. This is Rainer Shea's solution to the problem, and mine too.
I'm looking at American culture and the culture of all these neoliberal countries that whose people have been so enamored. They're swimming in this ocean of capitalist cultural hegemony, and it's not intuitive for them to think outside of the system. So the system is able to stave off their urge to really take drastic action by feeding them this propaganda about how we can fix the climate by changing the system, about how we can apply various tweaks to capitalism, like the corporate Green New Deal that the Democrats have proposed, or like the GOP's climate plan, which I saw a headline a couple months ago. The GOP has a climate plan and it involves clean coal. So these are the types of BS solutions that the system feeds us. And well, I think what people need is a revolutionary line, and to have some knowledge on revolutionary theory, so that so that they can know how to proceed. I mean, there's a because it's not enough even to say you need to take drastic action, because somebody who's not sufficiently theoretically informed might start engaging in stupid adventurous projects, like engaging in vandalism or violence that might set your movement back, or personally hurt you without having served a larger purpose. So before we engage in these types of direct actions like vandalism or violence, we're going to need to build up an infrastructure, build up a vanguard party, and win the masses over towards the idea of proletarian revolution. My article quotes an article from the Black Panther movement. I don't know the name of it, but it's the current Black Panther, and they lay out a vision for building dual power through creating alternative policing and service programs, and hopefully winning over some of the capitalist states' armed forces, like you've been talking about, so that we can move towards weakening the structure of the capitalist state, and ultimately basically waging a war of attrition, so that we can overthrow the state and replace it with a proletarian democracy.
Yeah, the party you're referring to is the African, the new African Black Panther Party. It's a really, I think, a pretty damn good organization. They identify as Maoists, but they're reasonable Maoists, in my opinion. And they call themselves the prison section because they had their roots in coming up doing prison work and or being prisoners. The guy who runs it, Rashid Johnson, right? Yeah,
right.
I've read some really great articles by him just recently. As a matter of fact, I want to send you an article by him that I think is really pertinent to a discussion you and I are having. But yeah, it's I fully endorse this organization. I'm really impressed with it, and they also have a broader movement that's called the I think the United Panther Movement or something like that, in which they have White Panther organization, a Brown Panther organization. So they have fraternal affiliations with others of like mind, of other nationalities, so to speak. And yeah, anyway, it was the article that you wrote, back to that, capitalism can't save us from climate crisis. I mean, it comes right down to it. Capitalism is just like we saw with this nonsense of Trump. There in the last discussion, the last topic we had. Trump is a billionaire. Trump is going to, just like any billionaire, all billionaires, he's going to do what's necessary to protect his bottom line, even though that is destroying the planet. It's as though these people have a disconnect, or they're in total denial that their system, their just their entire uh, uh, their entire operation from beginning to end, political, economic, social, cultural, all the way through every different aspect of the capitalist imperialist system, is destroying this planet and threatening to end life as we know it. I mean, in fact, it's not really destroying the planet. So the planet's going to be just fine without complex life. What it's doing is it's destroying complex life, like humans and other, large furry animals. Rats might survive. Cockroaches probably survive. You know, this this holocaust that these capitalists are bringing upon us, whether it is nuclear or climatological, it is a holocaust. You look at the sixth great die-off, which is the species die-off, the sixth time this has happened in Earth's history, but it's the first time it's happened because of human activity. I mean, we're seeing the greatest rate of species die-off in recorded history, and in the kind of history we can decipher from geological, from like ice cores, taking ice cores, from taking uh, 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 lake cores. It's phenomenally bad what's going on right now, and there's a way to save this. I do not believe this bullshit that we're past, past the time where the Earth can be saved. I just do not believe that, and I think that science backs me up that it's not true. But we're approaching that. We could get there if we go on for 50 or 100 more years. So we've got to stop it now. Not to mention, the threat of nuclear war that the capitalist imperialists bring to us every fucking day, which could wipe us out tomorrow. So anyway, yeah. It's quite disturbing. I think we need to do more on this. I've been kind of negligent in recent times in studying this, but or in bringing this issue up on the show. But we will improve on that because it's absolutely necessary right now. President Z and President Trump both remind us of that in totally different ways. Okay. BLM, Black Lives Matter. Breonna Taylor, the Breonna Taylor grand jury verdict came out a couple of weeks ago. I talked a little bit about it on last week's show, but the protests around that have continued, and the fallout around that has continued. It's not going anywhere, and it's spread to many different cities, not just Louisville, Kentucky, for sure. And for instance, Atlanta, I think it was, they had a huge demo. In New York, the marchers went across I think it was the Brooklyn Bridge, and shut down the bridge till the cops came and rousted them out. So yeah, things are definitely happening there. Meanwhile, in the Black Lives Matter movement, a new study has come out showing that hundreds of vehicle ramming attacks mark the new norm in America's civil unrest. This is a disturbing aspect where I think it was something like 9 of those were police ramming into protesters, and at least 100 more were civilian, right-wing nuts, probably, ramming into protesters. That's I think a development that we should keep an eye on. Also, I reported last week about the uh, Party for Socialism and Liberation anti-racist organizers who were arrested and still in jail, charged with kidnapping of all things. Well, they have, I think it was on Friday, they were released on bond, on bail. And they're still developing the movement, calling for drop the charges now because all the charges are still there. It just means that for the time being, these four innocent communists are out of jail, but the pigs are still going after them. So that's the latest kind of a roundup of a few things I thought were most important in the Black Lives Matter movement this week. However, a lot more went on, believe me. It's just like, as I mentioned last week, it's hard to keep up with it all. Rainer?
Yes, it's hard to keep up. This it's been more than 4 straight months of this escalating social unrest, and you know what we've in this last week or so we've seen how the police have been targeting communists, and how now we see how there's this violence, both in the form of vigilantes and in the form of the state with these police cars, all these dozens of people using cars to as weapons. So there's some examples of violence, both from the state and from the people who ideologically align with the state. What I'm interested in is what's happened with Trump's project to arrest people using unmarked federal agents and vehicles. It was such an alarming story in July when they used Gestapo style tactics in Portland, and then I saw a headline that this move from this type of mass arrest tactic from the DHS is coming to a city near you. Have you seen other examples of them normalizing this tactic?
Yes, in Louisville, Kentucky, as a matter of fact. Also in Denver, there were a few, but they were back then. I think that they've kind of cooled out because people started figuring out that the more they did that, the more the Trump regime cracked down in a Gestapo style, the more people were coming out. That was definitely the way it turned out in Portland. And so they started figuring out that they were actually causing, bigger demonstrations. They use their entire mass media that they own, the billionaires own it. They use their entire mass media to try to squelch knowledge of this movement, but I'm pretty sure it's still reaching tens of millions of people, because tens of millions of people have participated in it since the murder of George Floyd back in late May, I believe it was. So, yeah, I think for the time being, they've backed off a little bit. I haven't heard any more lately about this tactic going on. If we do, we'll talk about it. We'll report it. But I haven't heard much more. So, anyway, next topic. Topic number 4. Wow, we're breezing right along tonight. That's good. The dollar will crash in 2021. U.S. should brace for a double-dip recession, economist warns. Now, this is a major economist. I talked about him once before. Let me see if I can find the article exactly. But this is a major economist. I think that he worked for the one of the Bush administrations. And here it is. The article is from RT America, and you can get it. Let me go down here. You can get the article. Let's see here. Now, where did it go? Oh, here it is. Yeah, you can get the article. Just go to rt.com and look under their business category, and the article's called "Dollar Crash Next Year." And this economist, an economist that appears on RT quite often, so pretty smart guy. I can't remember his name at the moment, and I don't have the article, unfortunately, up in front of me. But this major economist is predicting the crash of the dollar. I'm kind of surprised that this hasn't happened already, to tell you the truth, because the dollar is under threat from so many directions. Under threat, especially from countries that are suffering under sanctions and are using are coming up with alternative forms of international currency to trade with, to buy and sell with. You know, it's definitely something that's on the way. The thing about double dip recession, you know, I mean, we've already been in a full-fledged depression since 2008. So I don't know why these idiots keep insisting on that. You know, this guy, I shouldn't call him an idiot because they say he's pretty smart, but I don't understand why they keep insisting on using this term recession. We are in a deep, dark depression. Unemployment, real unemployment. I just saw Richard Wolff, by the way, earlier today, talking about this. He did his own calculations of unemployment, just of people who are eligible to apply for unemployment insurance. And he counted 30 million people in that category, which he said that alone is 18% unemployment. And that's not even counting all those people who aren't eligible for unemployment because they didn't get in their 6 months or their 2 quarters or whatever nonsense they come up with to try to keep you from getting unemployment. Those people are millions more. And it's usually first hired or last hired, first fired. That's the way it usually goes in layoffs. So obviously a lot of these people got hired 3-4 months ago and then they get fired. They're not eligible for unemployment insurance. So this is a depression. The unemployment recently, in the recent months, has been higher than at any time during the Great Depression of the 1930s. And it is still, as Richard, you know, if we went by Richard Wolff's figures, it's still 18% right now. I would say it's more like 24, 25% right now. If we count all those people who've given up finding jobs, who aren't eligible for unemployment but are still desperately looking for jobs. If we count all those really unemployed people, I'd say at least 23% of the workforce is unemployed, which is still higher than at almost every point during the Great Depression. So who the fuck are these people trying to fool with this word recession? You know, a recession is just like a mild, brief downturn of the economy. This is not a mild or brief downturn of the economy. Okay, Rainer, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, when you explain it, when you tally up the numbers and explain how 1/4 of the U.S. adult population is unemployed, and how incredible this is, what huge implications this has for just how big the economic ruin the United States is facing. It does make me wonder why the word recession is still so normalized within our language. I mean, I guess depression is considered too dramatic, even for the most well-informed analysts like this person, and it's no wonder why the mainstream, the political and media establishment seem to pretty much consistently use recession over depression. It helps feed into their preferred narrative about how the U.S. is in recovery, or recovery is just around the corner. I've been paying attention to Trump's line about the economy, and in July, Trump said something along the lines of the economy is doing excellently, and now Trump and Trump's backers in the political and media establishment are taking up the line that our president built up an incredible, unprecedented American economy, and if we reelect him, he's going to build it all up. This is just a little dip. That's all the fault of China's coronavirus, and China shot us with a nuclear missile that was filled with coronaviruses, and they and they've sprayed all across the United States, and that's why over 200,000 Americans are dead from COVID-19 now, and why we're in the worst depression in a century now.
Yeah.
So next year it's going to get even harder for them to deny. And after the dollar crashes, I've been hearing discourse about when the dollar will crash, and I've gotten the sense from it that after the dollar crashes is when really a new wave of destabilization and fascist takeover will take place, and when the state will crack down in order to try to quell the huge unrest.
Right. So next on the list, U.S. federal judge halts Trump administration's TikTok ban. China will defend TikTok's right to the end. TikTok's rights to the end. That comes from a Global Times editorial from this morning. So just put Global Times into your favorite search engine. I'm gonna stop saying Google. I like DuckDuckGo. And look for today's editorial on the Global Times. But this U.S. judge yesterday put a halt to the Trump administration's TikTok ban, which was to have gone into effect last night. That was the deadline, the time when it was supposed to go into effect. So, for the time being, at least, the Trump administration has been thwarted, and that's really good news. No matter what, as we've talked about in the past, China is not going to allow the American regime, the Trump regime, to pirate TikTok out from under them, at least the American part of TikTok. TikTok's actually a global company, so it's all over. but the Americans are trying to steal the American assets of TikTok, and it ain't gonna happen. We reported a couple of weeks ago about that deal that might come through with Oracle software, Larry Ellison's Oracle, the samurai dude. You remember that? Yeah, I mean, for the time being, the TikTok may not have to go that route because, there's still a chance that courts will smash the Trump administration's diktat, which they should, because this is illegal. It's piracy, as we've talked about in the past. So, Rainer, thoughts?
Oh, yeah. It sounds like there's not really a sense of consensus around the legitimacy of Trump's attempt at piracy, including not within the Western imperialist sphere, because Trump has been with this move has really been lashing out in ways that are reactive, and I think he's really reacting to the specter of a collapse for the American economy and an implosion of American industry. We were just talking about how the U.S. dollar is months away from collapsing, and with moves like this, Trump is trying to consolidate or steal productive forces and resources, so that the U.S. will hopefully be better off. And the fact that this centers around TikTok shows how futile it is. Even if everything were to go right for Trump in his TikTok fight, the dollar will still crash next year.
Yes, it will. I'm sure that that a lot of people in the bourgeoisie, as we Marxists call it, in the capitalist ruling class, as I like to call it, because it's a little bit more understandable to the modern ear. I'm sure that a lot of them are quite concerned with the precedent that this sets. To have a president, this has never happened before, to my knowledge, in all the history, unless a country had, unless the country, the Americans, had declared war on another country. Then, yes, you confiscate or you freeze or you don't let trade happen with the enemy's companies. But the United States is not at war. It has not declared war. I mean, the United States is waging war, but it's an undeclared hybrid asymmetrical war. I've explained that term numerous times on the show in the past, so I'm not going to bother explaining it again. But, let us know if you think we should. So, let's see. I think that the precedent is scary even to most bourgeois figures, most ruling class figures, because of what it says. It says that the government could, pirate anybody's stuff, productive property or otherwise, to your personal property even. So it's a bad precedent. Anyway, next on our list, American cultural psychosis and anti-Chinese war propaganda. Fits well, I think, with the last topic. This one is another article, a great article, I thought. Great analysis by Rainer Shea. Take it away, buddy.
Last week, I watched the Honest Trailers video for the new Mulan movie. Why does this movie keep coming up in our discussions? And right in the middle of their video riffing on the new Mulan movie, this Honest Trailers, this YouTube channel, they introduced the whole Xinjiang subject. I don't know if I'm saying the word right, and what they did was help reinforce the American cultural consensus that China is detaining and persecuting millions of Uyghur Muslims. Apparently it's moved in this last year or so from over a million or around a million Uyghurs to millions. That's how sloppy and dishonest this headline that Honest Trailers showed was. And I'm seeing how these lies about China, these debunked lies, are being repeated in pretty much every aspect of popular English-speaking media, from Last Week Tonight with John Oliver to the Joe Rogan Experience. It was Ben Shapiro who led the charge on there, to South Park, though it's really no surprise. South Park has always been kind of reactionary. And it reflects a deeply delusional mindset that's setting in amid this paradigm of late stage imperialist reaction. It's reflective of the cultural psychosis that appeared during the Iraq War, when most Americans came to believe that Saddam Hussein was to blame for the 9/11 attacks, and when pretty much everyone seemed to believe the Bush administration's sketchy claims about Iraqi weapons. And now you could argue that with China and within the new Cold War, it's even more pronounced, because pretty much no political faction within the United States is willing to challenge these inflammatory lies, particularly about the Uyghur issue. Like it's pretty much only principled communists plus some principled left-leaning journalists at the Gray Zone who are setting the record straight and confronting the people who peddled these lies, and it has to do really with opportunism, because it seems like most factions of the left here are willing to go along with since that it furthers their goal to delegitimize the Communist Party of China. Like the anarchists are typically anti-China. There's the Social Democrats who are in the imperialist Bernie Sanders wing. There are the Trotskyists who are skeptics. So it's pretty much just the Marxist-Leninists, who I don't know how fringe of a group we are, though thankfully we're growing. And this reflects the whole state of what America has become, a mad imperialist dog that's lashing out. And our hope is socialist revolution, but the horror of our situation is that because lies like the ones I've mentioned have become so broadly accepted, and there's such a near consensus within our culture, I think this blunts the rise of proletarian consciousness. How can you build a movement with a coherent revolutionary line when pretty much all of your political factions are willing to repeat U.S. State Department propaganda that helps with this hybrid asymmetrical warfare? And of course, it helps feed into the more extreme anti-Chinese positions, like the claims about how China is to blame, or how China created a bioweapon, and all this conspiracy stuff. that's really dangerous and is helping get more Asians be the victims of hate crimes. And it's all, of course, fueled by the president himself and by the president's partners in right-wing media. And the result is what you've described so far. The result is Cold War escalations, and these escalations help further the goals of the U.S. ruling class and distract from the pressing crisis of climate change, while at the same time helping blunt class consciousness. So this is the harmful effect of anti-Chinese propaganda and the harmful effect of modern war propaganda in general. Propaganda against Russia, Iran, Venezuela, Syria, recently Belarus, and propaganda against Hezbollah. So this is I'm trying to illustrate the consequences of not standing up to the lies that are being promoted.
Yes, well put, and I agree 100%. It's funny, in the next topic we're going to be dealing with, which is a conference that was held by the Black Alliance for Peace, and Danny Haifong and Margaret Kimberly are the coordinators of that group, the co-coordinators, I guess. And it's a group that was started by Black Agenda Report and the people on Black Agenda Report. However, they've got a lot of buy-in and participation, not only nationally but internationally, in this group. And they did a online webinar, online conference last Wednesday, I believe, or maybe, yeah, I think it was Wednesday. And Danny Haifong did a really stupendous speech analyzing. I'll go into the rest of what Danny did, but one of the points he made was exactly the same thing you said about how this the American empire in its collapsing phase is lashing out irrationally. It's dangerous, but it's also encouraging that it's definite sign of the end is in sight. Some of you guys, like especially your age, will definitely see it. I don't know if I will, but I hope I do. I'm going to try to hang on that long because, man, seeing the collapse of the American empire, that will certainly be a thrilling thing. We can finally take our country back and put it in order, put it in democracy for a change, put it in socialism, put it under the control of the working class, grant self-determination. Thank you, Rainer, for constantly bringing this aspect up that we really need to keep on the top of our consciousness, but respecting the self-determination of all nations, oppressed nations and oppressed nationalities within this country. Those are the jobs we need to do to save this world. The first step, because the biggest threat to humanity is American imperialism, bar none. That is the biggest threat. So, yeah, the anti-China war propaganda, the American cultural psychosis, yeah, this is all part of it. And we really need, another aspect of this I think we need to discuss a little bit too is what's called the left, you know, and even the socialist and communist left. Most of the socialist and communist left in the United States, exactly, and the anarchist left, exactly as you described. They are objectively, I don't think any of them really understand this or know what they're doing. Not very many anyway. But they are objectively pro-imperialist. They're feeding into this imperialist garbage. They're feeding into the hybrid asymmetrical war on China and on Russia, on Syria, on Iran, on Venezuela, on Cuba. The list goes on and on. However, I like to point out to people, and this has been a truism throughout our history, the history of the socialist movement for the last 200 or a little tiny bit less than 200 years. The history shows that when people first come to be interested in socialist ideas, the first people they turn to are reformists, social democrats, because that seems like it would be the easy route. It's not. It's actually the much harder route because it is impossible, undoable. They never actually succeed. Or they turn to the anarchist route, which is just, what you were talking about a little earlier with just irrational lashing out of the left. That's what the anarchist approach is, because they have no real class analysis. They do not have the tools of Marxism at hand. Some of them do, actually, but most of them do not have the tools of Marxism at hand to apply to give themselves the kind of understanding that Marxist-Leninists have and that authentic Marxists have. So yes, it's, we are a minority, but we are growing. I am absolutely positive of that. The social democrats and the anarchists are growing much more quickly, but as I say, that is the early phase. That is what we need to expect. It will take these people a while to start figuring out that, hey, the anarchist route really doesn't work. There's never been a successful anarchist revolution in the history of the world. And the social democrat reformist route does not work. There's never been a real successful transition to authentic socialism through this social democratic reformism, even though 100 years ago, that's exactly what the reformist socialists, the social democrats, as they've come to be called, promised. They promised us an evolution towards socialism. Well, they've had a fucking 100 years to do it. Where's the socialism? It's still not a single case of anywhere in the world where social democrat parties have come to power within or under capitalist states, which is the way they do it, which is insane, because then all they do is they become a great administrator for the capitalist state. It's absurd, but they have not been successful. We, Marxist-Leninists, are the only current of Marxism, the only current of socialism that has been successful over and over and over and over again. We can show people the Soviet Union. We can show people China. We can show people all of Eastern Europe. We can show people Laos and Vietnam. We can show people Cuba. And there are other examples as well from our history. And those have all been success stories. There's been a lot of propaganda to try to teach you that they're not success stories. I saw another thing today. Who was it? Some friend of mine posting that, oh, I know. Well, anyway, I won't mention names, but they posted statistics from Azerbaijan and what's the other one? 2 countries in the Southern Caucasus of the former Russian, former Soviet Union, Azerbaijan was one, and I'm blanking on the other. But in both cases, in one, 78%, and in the other, 84% of the people in a recent poll said they want the USSR back. There's a reason for that. They were better off than they are now under capitalism. You know, that's the reason. So anyway, it's those are my thoughts. Communist, real, authentic communist organizations, Marxist-Leninist organizations are not going to grow first thing as soon as there's a radicalization. We're going to grow later on. I always think of the model of the Soviet, of the Russian and the Soviet revolutions in 1917. In January of 1917, the Social Democratic parties and the anarchist organizations in the Russian Empire were growing by leaps and bounds. They were huge. And the poor little Bolshevik party had I remember the figure, 12,000 members in all of the Russian Empire, which was a humongous, I mean, it was the biggest empire in existence at that time, except maybe the British Empire. It was huge. It covered more than 1/4 of the population of the world and more than 1/4 of the landmass of the world. And yet there were only 12,000 Bolsheviks in the whole country in January. That was not, you know, and they looked around and they saw all these social democrat parties, the Mensheviks and other smaller ones, growing by leaps and bounds, growing. I mean, they were multiple times larger than the Bolsheviks. But Lenin understood, bide your time, because as this crisis deepens, more and more people will come to a revolutionary understanding if we are there to explain things to them, to pose or propose a revolutionary strategy and a revolutionary plan that is rational and reasonable and works. So my advice on this is, yes, DSA. I heard yesterday from a friend, or day before yesterday, the DSA has 80,000 members now. I mean, in 2017, they had like 6,000 members. So that's how fast they've grown, you know, tremendously fast. People are, you know, becoming more and more radicalized by this crisis. The same people who people were saying 3 or 4 years ago, oh, you know, they'll never think of socialism, socialism won't work, blah, blah, blah. The same people are now members of DSA. Well, that's not great. I mean, DSA, they're reformists, just as you say, and they're pro-imperialist, objectively. But those same people will not be satisfied with DSA in the months to come, or, you know, at least by sometime next year, I'm positive they will no longer be satisfied with that.
There's where it gets tricky, because there's the thing about imperialism is the people within countries that benefit from imperialism, they have kind of an alignment of interests with the bourgeoisie, and Stalin and other communists of his time assessed something called social fascist theory. You must have heard. I know you've heard about it, where a certain segment of the working class is willing to align with reformist forces that will ultimately go along with the reactionary and repressive actions of the more right-leaning facets of the ruling class. Like in Germany, it was Social Democrats who approved the assassination of top communists, and right now you see how Social Democrats like Sanders are aligning with the police, and will giving these BS posturings of caring about the issue, and as when push comes to shove, I wonder how many of the members of the DSA will join with, say, the future People's Army, and how many of them will be willfully complicit in in capitalist state violence used to preserve the system.
Well, first of all, not many. Because DSA is an organization that teaches their people not to do that. However, you know, I firmly believe, I still believe to this day, that within reformist social democracy, there is a kernel of fascism that is ready to pop out. After all, what was Mussolini before he was the inventor of fascism? Do you know?
A socialist.
Not
I think his
just
father
a
was a
socialist. Not just a socialist. Yes, his father was a socialist. He was a socialist. He was the editor of the Italian Socialist Party's newspaper. That's pretty high up there. That's pretty important social democratic job. And that's back in the days prior to World War I, when social democracy was a revolutionary ideology. So he was a revolutionary socialist. But when World War I came, and a certain segment of the working class sided with their own bourgeoisies against workers in other countries, which is what happened to a lot of people in the Italian Socialist Party, even though they had been trained Marxists and had been, committed to revolutionary internationalism. A certain number of them went over to this reformist socialist idea. And so by the end of World War I, there was a segment of national socialists, nationalist socialists, of which Mussolini became the leader. And out of that movement, he created fascism. He was the father of fascism. He created it. So yes, there's a kernel in reformist socialism. There always is a kernel. You had the thing with the Friedenkorps murdering socialists, including the stupendous Rosa Luxemburg, and what's the other? I can't remember her collaborator. Blanking on his name at the moment. Man, I'm getting old. Anyway, yes, there's always the possibility of social fascism popping out. And Stalin was absolutely correct to call the German social fascists at that time, because they enabled the rise of Hitler. It was their Weimar Republic that enabled the emergence of the Nazi Party and the ultimate domination of the Nazi Party, even though the Nazi Party never polled more than 1/3 of the nation. And had the Social Democrats blocked with the communists in 1933, they could have totally blocked Hitler coming to power. But they refused to work with communists, with the revolutionaries. They were anti-communists, and that's what it led to. It led to fascism. They will always be that way. However, my point was not that DSA members are going to join in the revolution. My point is that the people who are joining DSA today are not going to be satisfied with it. Many, many of them are not going to be satisfied with it, and they will leave for more revolutionary organizations as time goes on, as the months roll by, as this crisis deepens. And they will start to figure out, because things happen lightning fast when there's a crisis, especially when it becomes a pre-revolutionary crisis, and that's what this is becoming. Things happen fast. I believe that the revolutionary consciousness, with the help of the revolutionary socialists, with the revolutionary communists who are already out there who can explain things to them, with the Marxist Leninists, in other words, who are out there and can explain things, I believe that many, many of these people's brains can be saved. A brain is a terrible thing to waste on the DSA. And I believe that's going to happen. It's not just religious belief, it's scientific belief, because it's backed up by, like I said, 100 years of success stories, 100 years of what really happened. This happens over and over again. It has happened over and over again as people transition from being what they were taught to be all their lives, which is good supporters of capitalism, and transitioning to starting to question that and thinking, oh, socialism is much better. Let's go join DSA because that's the only socialist organization I ever heard of. From there transitioning to authentic Marxist-Leninism, to authentic revolutionary ideas, revolutionary parties, revolutionary organizations, revolutionary socialism, because that's what we really need. So those are my thoughts. Anything more on that?
No, we've been talking for a very long time. We're like an hour or so in.
Yeah.
I don't know how much more I want to do. Maybe a couple more. Okay,
well, definitely the next one is important. The next one is full spectrum dominance. The AFRICOM, or I'm sorry, let me start that again. Full spectrum dominance from AFRICOM to Indo-Pacific Command. And this, as I already explained, this is a webinar conference put on that had some great speakers in it. I really recommend that people go view it. It dealt with AFRICOM, which is the American African Command, and the Indo-Pacific Command, which is the American military command in the Pacific and India and other regions of Southeast Asia. It was just a stupendous learning experience. I mean, I didn't learn a whole lot because I already know this stuff, but I think almost anybody would learn, and I did learn from watching this webinar. Anyway, I wanted to feature Danny Haifong's speech during this. It was, in my opinion, brilliant. Exactly what needed to be said. Danny started off talking about the left, very similar to what you were just talking about the whole left in America and how much of it is objectively pro-imperialist. And then he went on to talk about the American imperialist aim of full spectrum dominance. Now, we've dealt with this term in the past on this show. I'll just go over it briefly again. Full spectrum dominance is the American objective of dominating the entire world militarily by land, by sea, by the air, and by space. Every possible way that it can be dominated militarily. That's why they've got this new idiotic, Space Force, the American Space Force, this is the real, actual, publicly stated official policy of the American military, and it has been the official policy. In other words, total imperialist domination of the world. They want to dominate the world like some fucking crazy, dictator that you see like in a bad B-rated spy movie. And they, a very crucial part of this is AFRICOM, their African Command, and Indo-Pacific Com. So Danny went on to explain how AFRICOM, under the Obama regime, AFRICOM was created, and that its objective was to turn Africa against China, because China has become incredibly influential and very much involved in the development of Africa over the last 20 or so years. The Obama regime, again, also had their pivot to Asia, which was the American plan to contain China. And what they mean by contain is circle them with military bases. According to Danny, there are 400 American military bases on land encircling China, not to mention all the, sea-going vessels, weapons of war, sea-going warships. In fact, according to Danny, 1/2 of all American sea-going assets, the ships and battle cruisers and missile, ships and aircraft carriers, 1/2 of them right now are in the Indo-Pacific theater. A lot of that concentrated right on the South China Sea. So anyway, this was, in my opinion, was a brilliant speech. You can find it if you go to, if you know how to do a Facebook search. If you go to Facebook and do a search for Black Alliance for Peace, and then on the Black Alliance for Peace Facebook page, look for the video Full Spectrum Dominance from AFRICOM to Indo-Pacific Command. Or you could just do a Google search for Full Spectrum Dominance, from AFRICOM to Indo-Pacific Command. But if you do that, beware that a bunch of the things that will have that same title are just announcements prior to, they're not actually the video. But if you go down 5 down the list, the number 5th one is that same Facebook, that same Facebook Black Alliance for Peace page that has the actual video that you can see. Full Spectrum Dominance from AFRICOM to Indo-Pacific Command. This tells you every fucking thing that's going on in geopolitics and strategic geopolitics of imperialism and of China and other and China's allies in fighting imperialist attacks. This will tell you what you need to know.
Yeah, it certainly reflects what I've been researching about how Washington has been managing managing South America and Latin America. This March, Southcom, which is another branch of U.S. imperialism's global military reach, they got Brazil and Colombia, and I think several Central American states to start to continue building up their militaries with the goal of trying to encircle Venezuela and prepare for a potential invasion of Venezuela. Who knows what the hell the end outcome for there could be. And overall, the U.S. has been militarizing Latin America, both with the goal of countering rival powers like Russia and China and Iran, and also with the goal of creating a kind of buffer against a potential future unrest for the right-wing regimes in the region that the U.S. Controls. And we've certainly been seeing this throughout the COVID-19 era as the militaries of Latin American neoliberal countries have been taking on a greater role in facilitating the response to COVID-19. And as the history of Latin America has shown, a greater role for the military traditionally leads to more of an implementation of something resembling dictatorship. Latin America has had a long history with U.S.-backed right-wing military dictatorships in Chile and Colombia and Brazil and other places. So this is the kind of political nightmare that this Washington global militarization campaign is leading towards, and it's happening not just in Latin America, as you've explained, but also in Africa, in places like India and these Indo-Pacific countries. And you've mentioned before that Japan is also being militarized, and all of this goes along with the deterioration of democratic institutions within these countries, and with the march towards war with China and other rival powers to Washington. So it's an overlapping trend of right-wing nationalism and military buildup and Cold War escalations. And I'm gonna need to look more into how this relates to AFRICOM, because I didn't even know that AFRICOM was created, as you say, during the Obama administration. This certainly makes sense given the context of how the Cold War on China began during the Obama administration. Which year did Obama create AFRICOM? Was it the same year that he started the pivot to Asia?
2011.
Oh, man.
I believe it was all of one piece. And that's another point that Danny made, that this is all of one piece. You know, you brought up the Southern Command. Same thing. It's all of one piece. That's why Danny started off with, and this conference started off with, full spectrum dominance. That's the key to understand this. This isn't about just one country, although China's the biggest threat to the American dream of dominating the whole world like a crazy fucking dictator. This is all of one piece. It's the whole strategy, political, diplomatic, cultural, warfare, hybrid warfare, because they can't use nuclear weapons, which is what they really would love to do if they could get away with it without being retaliated against. Thank God for MAD. You know what MAD is?
Mutually assured destruction.
Exactly.
Wow. I haven't heard this perspective on MAD before. I mean, the initial time you hear about it, you agree that it's totally mad and it's a horrifying situation for humanity to be in. But when you look at geopolitics and what the United States would do to countries like China and the DPRK if they didn't have nuclear weapons, you see how nuclear weapons have helped improve the material conditions of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people around the world. That they've allowed countries like the DPRK and China to remain sovereign and able to develop socialism while being free from neoliberal capitalist domination.
Exactly. And those countries that did not, that could have and decided not to develop nuclear weapons, like Gaddafi's Libya, where are they right now? Nowhere. I mean, Gaddafi's dead, carved up, exactly. Yeah, that's why I say thank the gods for mutually assured destruction. It's the only thing standing between us and the total annihilation of all socialist democracies, of all socialist, proletarian dictatorships, of all socialist workers' states. Every single one of them would be wiped off the fucking map if these insane fucking imperialist pigs were allowed to get their way. But they're not, because they know that they will die too, and they're not willing to do that. So, yeah, it's crazy, but that's where we're at in this world today. You got to stand up to these pigs. And Stalin knew this more than anybody, right? Stalin did every fucking thing he possibly could to develop nuclear weapons. Even when he was an ally of the United States and Britain, he knew that he had to come up with that bomb because the Americans were going to come up with that bomb. And they were going to use it to threaten him. And as a matter of fact, there are a lot of people who believe that the only reason the Americans used it on Japan was as a threat to the Soviet Union. I believe that. 4 years later, they developed their own nuclear weapon. And they went on to develop the first satellite, the first artificial communications satellite in space, Sputnik. They developed all kinds of shit. They were very successful. Very successful. Socialism works. Capitalism fucks things up. Okay. The next on the list, we've only got 2 more on the list. So you sure you want to? A matter of fact, we could just drop the last one, the election that could break America. It was a long article, and I think we can just drop that. But let's go into the last one. The U.S. ruling class turns to propaganda and censorship.
Yes. I mean, let's see. I write so many articles in a week. It gets jumbled in my head.
That's why I send you the agenda before time.
Yeah, I'm.
If you're drawing a blank on this,
Well, I at least I know the ideas behind it, which are that the U.S. ruling class is responding to all these destabilizing factors in society by escalating propaganda and censorship. But actually, it's coming back to me now. The thesis of my article is that as the foundations of U.S. capitalism fall out, and as the popular consensus for the idea that capitalism and imperialism are beneficial to the masses get degraded, and as the economy continues to collapse, the U.S. is resorting to propaganda and censorship to keep consent manufactured. I mean, you've mentioned that the foundations for U.S. capitalism have essentially been in the process of falling out for 12 full years now since the Depression began in 2008. And in this last year, the huge deteriorations of living standards have taken place. Apparently, 14 times more children in the U.S. are now don't always have something to eat, and hunger is tripled, and at least half the population can be considered in poverty. And it's going to get worse, a lot worse next year with the collapse of the dollar. So to maintain full spectrum dominance over the internal U.S. population, the ruling class is trying to cut off people from information that conflicts with the ideology behind U.S. imperialism. Like they're flooding people with the kinds of anti-Chinese lies that I mentioned earlier about the Uyghurs, and there's this constant flood of propaganda about all these countries, and all these manipulations to get people to not continue to radicalize towards class consciousness. And this propaganda campaign, facilitated by the CIA, largely from behind the scenes, is accompanied by a project where the intelligence agencies, in collaboration with the big tech companies that control the flow of online information, are constantly cutting off more and more dissenting journalism, like banning people from these platforms and deleting content, and making it harder for search engine algorithms to bring people to disfavored sites. And this has been escalating, particularly in the last 4 years, as Russiagate has gotten going, and as this ruling class reaction to the destabilizing factors of the Trump era has been taking place. It's a war on dissent, and it's who knows how far it'll go a year from now, after the dollar has likely crashed.
Yes. Well put, and it's a scary thing, isn't it? However, here's something that I fear out of all this. We are rising up. We are getting there in a way that I have never seen in my 66 years on this earth. We are moving forward. We, and by we I mean our class, the working class. I mean our movements. I mean, in particular, the ideas of socialism and the ideas, which as I said before, will become more popular now that this crisis is deepening. The ideas of revolutionary socialism, of communism, of Marxism, Leninism. We need to do, as Marxist-Leninists, we need to do everything in our power to reach out and to find ways to talk to people that do an end run around the CIA and the State Department and the Trump regime, or the Obama regime, or the Biden regime, if such a thing comes. Because the biggest problem we're going to have is demoralization, based not on the truth, on what's actually happening, but based on what our perception of what is happening is, because we've allowed ourselves to be dragged by the nose, led by the nose by the overwhelming capitalist media, the capitalist media that controls 95% of everything we see, hear, read, watch on internet, on newspapers, on TV, on radio, broadcast, and cable, and satellite. Every possible way that we get information, we're getting this bogus fake news that you just described. And we have to be weary, damned weary, especially the Marxist-Leninists out there. We have to be very weary of allowing ourselves to be led by the nose by this propaganda that you mentioned, that you describe, and of not allowing ourselves to become demoralized at exactly the time when we should be the most excited and thrilled, at the time that we should be reaching out and doing energetic work, reaching out to these newly radicalized, newly socialistized masses, and making sure that they understand the difference between social democracy, which has never worked, anarchism, which has never created a revolution in its entire fucking history, and revolutionary socialism, which has 100 years of success stories to point to. Even little Cuba, 90 miles off the shores of the American state, American nation, American continent, even little Cuba has a higher longevity rate, a higher life, a longer lifetime on average than America does. America, the richest country in the world. Problem with America is it's the richest country in the world, but the working class shares very little in those riches. Don't let yourself be fooled into thinking that the American working class is bought off. That's bullshit. The American working class, 20% of the American working class, if that, belong to the aristocracy of labor. That is the people who have really get a little bit more compared to everybody else. They don't get what they create. As Marx proves, even those people, they do not get what they create. They do not get all the surplus value that they create in the jobs they do. But they have been bought off simply as Lenin described it. Lenin said of the labor aristocracy, they've been bought off by crumbs from the ruling class table. That's what they've been bought off by. But that's 20% of the working class. And yes, most of those people are white, Euro-American workers. Most of the labor aristocracy. As we know, the ruling class uses racism to divide us. But don't allow them to divide us. The fact of the matter is that if 20% of the working class have been bought off and they've been bourgeoisified or petty bourgeoisified, that leaves the large majority of the working class, 80%, and it leaves even the large majority of Euro-American working class not being bought off, being deprived, and being pushed lower and lower and lower as time goes on, because the standards of living are getting worse. And in this last year, especially, they've gotten tremendously worse. And especially since the COVID-19 started, they've gotten really drastically worse. That's the reality. That's what's really happening in America. But as you say, brilliantly, that's not the perception that the capitalist ruling class mass media is trying to present to us. They're trying to present some fucking, rose-colored glasses, primrose path bullshit about this being, just a bump in the economy. We'll recover as soon as this COVID-19 is over. And good old Trump, he's going to bring out the inoculations for COVID-19 before the election, supposedly in an article I read today. In fact, Russia has already created a successful, highly successful, well-tested COVID-19 vaccine that everybody should have a chance to use right now. And Russia would be willing to license that to American companies so American companies could start producing it, but Trump won't let them. The bourgeoisie won't let them. So anyway, that's it for me, unless you have anything other to say, any final bits of wisdom.
Well, where do you, what do you think that it's 20% who are in the aristocracy? You're referring to people like police officers, certain government workers, like the maybe people who are closer to middle management, or is the term white collar workers? I wonder where you got this number, because it sounds
well. I get that number. I get that number from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because those Bureau of Labor Statistics is real detailed about what categories people are in. If you do research in the Bureau of Labor Statistics, if you do research on, for instance, the voting and non-voting statistics about the working class and other classes like the middle class, if you do research especially on first of all, who belongs to the working class. The working class are non-salaried, wage workers who are not in the management. People in the management, Trump came up with a great term, which I've been using actually longer than him, the managerial class, because that's what the middle class in America really is. It's the managerial class. And the managerial class constitutes about a quarter of the population. Of course, the bourgeoisie constitutes like 0.1% of the population. So that's the upper class, the ruling class, the capitalist class. The middle class, or the managerial class, as I call it, and you can find out exactly how many workers in the American workforce are managerial. That is, foremen, supervisors, managers, and executives. Those are the broad categories of the managerial class, plus business owners, even small business owners. Small business owners are managerial because they, even if they're just managing themselves, are managers. So that's 25%. And then about 5% are in what we call the lumpen proletariat. They're literally, Marx's term lumpen proletariat means the broken proletariat. Okay, that's where people like police officers and other kinds of thugs, hired thugs, belong. They're in the lumpen. Hired thugs for private corporations, hired thugs for the ruling class, which are called police. Those are the lumpen proletariat, along with the criminal class, because they're the same thing. It's amazing, if you look from this perspective, how criminal the police and the private guards and the private, investigators and the lumpen proletariat. It's amazing how criminal these people are, just like the real criminals. And it's amazing that the same person can one year be a police officer and the next year be a criminal, because it's two sides of the same coin. They are lumpen proletariat. So that leaves about 70% of us, a little more than 70 probably. but about 70% of us, and we are the working class. Now, among the 70%, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we are the non-managerial employees. Among the 70%, about 20% of that 70%, you can do the math, but about 20% of the 70% are in the bought off category. No more than that, probably a little bit less. Lenin didn't think it was quite so high, but Lenin didn't really, you know, the term of labor aristocracy has grown since Lenin's time. When Lenin was talking about this, he was just talking about Social Democrat Party hacks, party officials, and union officials, you know, labor union officials. That's all that he was talking about. That those people were bought off, and that then they misled the social democratic members of social democratic organizations or members of unions along this bad path as well. But Lenin was really just talking about these misleaders when he talked about the labor aristocracy. Well, it's come to the point now where we see that, yeah, that the actual bought off members of our class is larger than that. It includes people in a whole bunch of categories of more well-paid, more highly paid, or more ideologically fucked up, bourgeoisified workers. So I'd say a fair estimate is about 20% of the of our class is in that category.
Yeah. Well, there's the proportion who are, you can really argue, are in a labor aristocracy, and you know, the book Settlers, as I've read through it, it doesn't argue that there's never been a white proletariat. It really argues that there's always been not just the component of the labor aristocracy minority, but also the component of all these broad masses of settlers who, due to the colonial project, they've kind of bought into the colonial project, believing that it can materially help them, and this has objectively been the case, like screwing over colonized people for so that this imperialist project can annex more land and expand itself. And what I'm saying is it's complicated and multi-layered. The amount of people in this country who you can argue have been bought off or have sold out to some extent, and there continues to be a great discrepancy between white people and black and brown and native people, and how much money they have. So I think that the capitalist accelerationism is going to have to increase even more, and that things are going to get even worse in order for all these people who have sold out to a certain extent to get onto the side of the revolution and radicalize more. And this is what we've discussed. As this crisis continues, people are moving first towards social democracy and anarchism, and then hopefully towards revolutionary socialism.
Yeah. And, you know, the reason I still haven't read this book, although I started today reading The Settlers, and already I'm disturbed by a lot of Saki's approach, because I think it's a divisive approach. It's an approach that ignores a lot of facts. At one time, you could say, 100 years ago, you could say, yes, the working class, the white working class was pretty well bought off, almost the whole class. Not all of it, because, even then there were lots of white workers who were not racists, who were not supportive of the imperialist wars and so forth. But today, especially since Vietnam, that number of the white working class that has become totally disenchanted with imperialism, totally disenchanted with imperialist wars, and it has grown and grown and grown phenomenally in a way that I never believed I'd see in my lifetime. Till today, yes, are there working class people who are bought off? Fuck, my two little sisters are fascists, outright fascists.
Trumpers, I'm guessing.
Huh? Oh, total Trumpers. Yeah, and they're both working class. They have absolutely no reason to support Trump or no reason to support imperialism. Actually, my one sister's a little bit weird because she does not support a lot of the imperialist wars. But, of course, Trump says he doesn't, too. And a lot of the reason that the few workers, and I say few because it was only few working class people who actually voted for Trump, because all the statistical analysis shows that. And I've seen several, authoritative academic studies that prove that the working class, in its great majority, and even most of the white working class, did not vote for Trump. Now, these people, they try to fool around with figures. They try to lump in large parts of the middle class, managerial class, with the working class. And of course, the managerial class votes in huge numbers. Like 80, 90% of the managerial class votes every election, every federal election. And yes, among the managerial class, 70% of the managerial class voted for Trump last time. Remember, they're only like 20 to 25% of the population, but they, in enormous amounts, they voted. So yes, those white, workers who are not working class, they voted for Trump. And a small section of the authentic working class who are part of the labor aristocracy who've been bought off, they voted for Trump. Some of them, at least, a third of them did. The other 2/3 voted for that asswipe Hillary Clinton, which is just as bad, everywhere as bad, and in some ways worse. But yeah, the overwhelming majority of working class people, including the overwhelming majority, or at least a large, significant majority of Anglo working class, did not vote for Trump, did not vote for Hillary Clinton. I like to call her Hitlery, for Hillary Clinton. They didn't vote at all. Because 80% of us in the working class don't vote. And that there's mountains of statistical information that proves that. We in the working class have become totally disenchanted with almost every major capitalist institution, including elections, including the Congress, including the White House, including the entire government, including really the whole state. We have become disenchanted with it. We have become lacking in faith in it. We no longer see it as a legitimate power, and we no longer want that illegitimate power to be ruling over us. Unfortunately, they haven't come to the point where they actually have figured out that it's going to take revolution to get there, because a lot of these people have been sucked into social democracy, the pipe dream that you can reform your way out of this mess, that you can vote your way out of this mess. You know, that's bullshit. Social democracy is bullshit. That's one thing. I mean, most of these people don't vote. Most of the working class don't vote. But those who start going towards social democracy, the real danger is that they will start voting again. And who are they going to vote for? Who does DSA tell them to vote for? Who does the Communist Party USA tell them to vote for? Pedophile Joe. That's who they tell them to vote for.
I don't know if I don't think DSA has officially endorsed Biden. They're more. It seems like they're more fence sitting this time.
Yeah. Well, I'll go check that out. But I'm like 99% positive that they will have all their people out, not just voting for, but working for this pedophilic, rapist, imperialist capitalist pig called Jumpin' Joe, or whatever the fuck his name is, pedophilia Joe, groping Joe. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they will. The Communist Party already is. I looked that up recently. I haven't looked up the DSA. I just know what the DSA has done every single time since they first started in 1972. They weren't called DSA then, they were called DSOC, but same difference. Ever since 1972, when Michael Harrington, the guru of social democracy in America, started DSA and split up the Socialist Party of America, they've been voting consistently every single time for the imperialist, for war, for imperialist war, for imperialism. That's what they always vote for. So I'm not, if they don't this year, I will be really, really surprised. Bernie's telling them to.
Yeah.
AOC is telling them to.
Yeah.
So anyway, anything else? Good discussion.
Yeah, very substantial. Nothing else to say.
Great. Let's see, we started, we're almost 2 hours now, so I think about an hour and 56 minutes. So that's a good place to stop. Thank everyone, all our watchers on YouTube, all our listeners on other venues. Thank you, Rainer, of course. We've really got to get some guests on here, so it's not just you and me. Not that I don't enjoy talking to you, because I always do, but you know, just so people can get a little bit more variety and pull in a few more perspectives that we haven't had in a time. Really wish I could get Bob to come back, but I don't think that's in the cards for a while. That's more a long-term thing. So, you know, thank you once again for great contributions, brilliant analysis, and until next week, we'll be talking to you next week around this same time. We'll be popping up on various video and audio services. So long, Rainer.
All right. Bye.